Okay, so right off the bat, let me ask you something. If someone offered you something that you knew deep down would ultimately be harmful to you, like it would make you worse off, but it was cleverly disguised as something good, would you take it?
I mean, it seems obvious when you put it like that.
Yeah, you'd think right. But the article we're diving into today, Garbage In, Garbage Out, Why You Are the Sum of What You Consume, it really gets you thinking about all the subtle ways we might be making that trade-off every single day without even realizing it.
Absolutely. And what really jumped out at me from the article is how much of what we're constantly taking in just kind of flies under the radar. We're
Yeah.
bombarded with information, food interactions with other people. And are these inputs building us up or are they subtly chipping away at our well being?
Totally. And I think that's the real heart of this deep dive. It's not just about making a single bad decision here or there, but it's the cumulative effect of everything you allow into your life day after day after day after day. The article is really about you, in a very real sense, becoming the average of what you consistently consume.
And one of the most insightful things in the article is this comparison it makes between you, the listener, and a scientist conducting an ongoing experiment.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Every single choice you make, every bit of information you absorb, every relationship you nurture or neglect, these are all data points.
Okay.
But the really crucial question the article asks is, are you consciously designing this experiment? Are you carefully selecting those variables, or are you just kind of reacting to whatever comes your way like a passive consumer?
That is such a powerful way to frame it.
It is, right?
Because if you think about the results you see in your own life, your energy levels, how clearly you think the quality of your relationships, these aren't just random occurrences.
Not at all.
They're the direct outputs of the systems you're running and the inputs you're providing, whether you're fully aware of it or not.
And that's why if you find yourself constantly battling fatigue or stress or feeling stuck in a rut, the article's invitation is to take a step back
Yeah.
and really scrutinize those inputs. What are you consistently feeding your mind, your body, and your social circle?
I love that taking a step back. So let's unpack this idea of the scientist versus the consumer a little bit more,
Right.
because the article makes a pretty compelling case for why understanding this distinction is so important.
Right.
It talks about how our daily choices, they act like data points in this ongoing personal experiment of life.
Right.
So what kind of data are you actively seeking out? Are you prioritizing information that expands your understanding food, that truly nourishes your body, and relationships that uplift and support you? Or are you just kind of accepting whatever the world throws at you without much thought?
And building on that, the article really highlights how the patterns we see in our lives, the things we experience again and again, aren't random. They're actually a reflection of those repeated inputs we're talking about. It's like a garden. If you're constantly planting weeds, you can't really be surprised when weeds are what sprout up.
Right.
Our lives, the article argues, operate under a similar principle of cause and effect. It's all about the choices we make and the things we allow in.
It's so easy to slip into that consumer mode, though, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with information, endless options for food, a million different ways to connect virtually. It takes real effort to pause and ask, what am I actually inviting into my personal ecosystem?
Yeah, and that's where the article starts to get really practical because it offers some really useful angles on how to actually become more discerning with these inputs, how to filter out the junk and start prioritizing quality.
So give us an example.
Well, one of the most interesting ideas in the article is how it takes a concept from one area of life and applies it to another. It brings up Michael Pollan's famous suggestion about food: eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
I love Michael Pollan.
Right. And in the context of this article, that simple rule becomes so much more profound.
Yeah, how so?
Well, because the act of creation, the cooking itself, that's what drastically improves the quality.
Okay.
By simply requiring yourself to be involved in the preparation, you're automatically filtering out a massive amount of processed and often detrimental ingredients.
Without needing a complex set of rules. Yeah.
Exactly. You're taking control of the inputs.
I love that. And the article then says, okay, if cooking your own food elevates your physical well-being by controlling the inputs, what's the equivalent for your mental and social nourishment?
It's a brilliant question.
What are you cooking for your mind?
Exactly. It's about actively choosing what information and what relationships you cultivate rather than passively accepting whatever's readily available.
So how can you cook your information diet? What does that even look like?
Well, the article talks about becoming a conscious filter. Instead of mindlessly scrolling through those endless feeds that are designed to keep you hooked, what if you actively curated your sources?
Okay.
Prioritize deep and thoughtful content over fleeting headlines and intentionally sought out diverse perspectives to challenge your existing views.
So it's not just about cutting things out. It's about being intentional about what you let in.
Absolutely.
Okay. And what about relationships? Where does that fit into the idea of cooking your inputs?
Well, the article argues that the same level of intentionality you apply to information needs to be applied to the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Who are the individuals you're consistently spending your time with? Do those interactions leave you feeling energized and supported? Do they contribute to your growth?
Or are they draining your energy and reinforcing negative patterns?
Exactly. The article really wants you to see your social circle as a vital input that you have some control over.
Okay, so we talked about food, we've talked about information and relationships, but the article also spends quite a bit of time on the influence of media and marketing, which feels especially relevant in today's world.
Oh, it's huge. And the article uses this really striking phrase, the algorithm running your brain.
Wow.
Think about that for a second. What you choose to watch, who you follow online, the messages you're constantly exposed to, these are all inputs that are shaping your thoughts, influencing your perceptions, even dictating your behaviors in really subtle ways.
And it's not always with our best interests in mind, right?
Not necessarily. The article points out how these algorithms are designed to exploit our attention biases, to keep us engaged, often with content that isn't really serving us.
It's almost like we're being programmed without realizing it.
In a way. And on top of that, the article highlights how the dominant narratives we're exposed to, they often normalize things that are actually detrimental to our well-being.
Like what?
Well, think about how alcohol is often portrayed as synonymous with freedom and relaxation, when in reality it's a depressant.
Right.
Or how caffeine is glorified as essential for high performance, when it's often just borrowed energy that leads to a crash later.
And then there's the whole hustle culture phenomenon, which is often celebrated but can come at the expense of burnout and well-being.
Absolutely. And the article makes a fascinating connection between these media narratives and Don Miguel Ruiz's concept of being impeccable with your word from the Four Agreements.
Oh, interesting.
It argues that this principle extends beyond just what we say out loud. It's equally critical to be impeccable with what we allow into our minds through media. It uses this powerful metaphor, suggesting that media can cast spells on us through the words and images we consume.
Not spells in the literal magic sense, but more like the persuasive power of language and imagery to shape our beliefs.
Exactly.
So it begs the question, what kind of spells are being cast on us every single day, and are those messages ultimately serving us?
It's a really important question to ask, and this leads directly into the article's core argument, garbage inputs, garbage outputs, and what it calls the manifestation effect.
I've heard that phrase before, manifestation, but I'm not really sure I fully understand it.
Well, what I appreciate about the article is that it takes this concept, which is often shrouded in mysticism, and reframes it in a really grounded way.
Okay.
It presents manifestation not as some magical force, but as a natural consequence of long-term pattern recognition.
Okay.
So when you consistently provide high-quality inputs in any area of your life, the article suggests you're far more likely to see positive results in the long run.
That makes sense.
And this applies not just to your physical health, but to your mental clarity and even what the article refers to as your soul, your overall sense of well-being and your resonant frequency.
So it's not just woo-woo. It's actually about recognizing the power of consistent actions and choices.
Exactly.
And if you think about it, there's so many examples of people who understand this principle intuitively.
Oh, tons, like monks who deliberately cultivate environments of peace and guard their mental and physical energy, or top-performing athletes who are meticulous about their training, their nutrition, their recovery. They're not just hoping for success, they're actively engineering it.
By controlling the inputs.
Exactly. And the article really emphasizes how approaching life with that kind of experimental mindset where you're consciously choosing your inputs can lead to more predictable and desirable outputs.
So let's bring this back to the listener for a moment. What are some concrete things people can do to start becoming more aware of and improving their inputs?
Well, the article has some great advice based on the specific outcomes you're looking for. So, for example, if you want more energy, it suggests eliminating processed foods and focusing on whole nutrient-rich options.
Makes sense.
If mental clarity is your goal, it recommends taking a break from the constant onslaught of negative or distracting online content.
Detox from the outrage machine.
Exactly. And if inner peace is what you're seeking, the article suggests consciously cutting out toxic relationships and consistently negative sources of information.
So it's about aligning your inputs with your desired outcomes.
Precisely. And the article makes it very clear that this is a fundamental principle that applies across the board. Inputs shape outputs always.
And if you're feeling inspired to take action and really start curating your inputs, the article even has a bookstore section with some amazing recommendations.
Yeah, it's a great resource. And what's really cool is how each of these books offers a different lens for understanding and upgrading your inputs.
So tell us about a couple of them.
Well, you've got Michael Pollan's The Omnivore's Dilemma, which dives deep into the world of food and gives you a framework for making more informed choices about what you eat.
Yeah.
Then there's Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life, which focuses on the power of our thoughts and provides tools for transforming self-sabotaging patterns that can really hold us back.
It's like cleaning up the garbage in our minds.
Exactly. And then you've got Don Miguel Ruiz's The Four Agreements, which helps you become aware of the often unspoken agreements or beliefs that are shaping your reality and gives you a roadmap for rewriting the limiting ones.
I love that book.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, very.
Right, and then to broaden the scope a bit, there's Paul Hawkins' Regeneration, which suggests that personal healing and conscious living are actually integral to the larger project of regenerating our planet.
So it's connecting our individual inputs to a wider positive impact.
Absolutely. And finally, there's NLP, The Essential Guide by Tom Dotz and Tom Hubiar, which offers practical techniques for understanding and consciously utilizing the language we use both internally and externally to shape our behavior and our interactions with the world.
I'm adding all of these to my reading list.
Me too. They're so good. And what the article does so well is it presents these books as tools for improving your inputs, like precision-guided weapons for your mind or blueprints for better inputs.
I love that analogy. And beyond the practical book recommendations, the article also weaves in some really beautiful poetry and philosophical wisdom that adds another layer of depth.
Oh, absolutely. Like that really poignant original poem. A seed does not argue with the soil. It simply takes what is given and grows into its fate.
That's beautiful.
It is, right. And it's such a powerful reminder to consider what kind of soil we're cultivating with our daily choices.
And it ties in so well with some of those ancient wisdom traditions.
Totally. Like that famous Taoist saying from Laozi, watch your thoughts, they will become your actions. And then there's that powerful Stoic truth from Epictetus. We control our mind, not the world.
I love that.
Yeah.
And the article makes a really important point about how these age-old truths feel even more relevant today in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and where algorithms are actively competing for our attention.
It's true.
Like the external pressures and temptations have always been there, but the sheer volume and persuasive power of the inputs we face now, it's unprecedented.
It really is. And that's why the article argues that cultivating discernment, that ability to thoughtfully evaluate and filter the inputs we allow into our lives, that's our most crucial weapon in this new landscape.
It's about becoming the gatekeeper of your own mind.
Exactly.
So how can we actually develop that discernment? How can we get better at filtering out the noise and identifying the inputs that truly nourish us?
Well, the article offers a really practical starting point. It's called the 1-week detox challenge.
Okay, tell me more.
It's not about making some huge, drastic overnight change. It's more about conducting a small personal experiment in conscious consumption.
I like that.
And the beauty of it is its simplicity. For just 1 week. You choose one specific garbage input in your life. Something like constantly checking negative news headlines or engaging in draining social media interactions or mindlessly snacking on processed food.
Okay.
And then you replace it with a quality input. It could be reading a book that inspires you, cooking a nourishing meal, spending time in nature, or engaging in a hobby you love.
And then what?
You simply observe the difference. How do you feel? What shifts do you notice in your energy levels, your mood, your overall well-being?
So it's about paying attention to the cause and effect relationship between our inputs and our outputs.
Precisely. And the article emphasizes that real lasting change, it often comes from these small, consistent adjustments to our daily habits, not from trying to overhaul everything at once.
It's about taking those small steps in the right direction consistently.
Exactly. And as the article so wisely puts it, quality compounds.
I love that. So just to recap, the main takeaway from this deep dive, which was inspired entirely by that fantastic article, You are, without a doubt, the sum of what you consistently consume.
100%.
Becoming aware of your inputs, the information you take in the food you eat, the people you surround yourself with, and consciously curating those inputs, that's the key to creating more positive outcomes in every area of your life.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
And we encourage everyone listening to try that 1-week detox challenge that the article outlines. It's a great way to start experimenting with this idea in a really manageable way.
It is, and it might just surprise you how much of a difference even one small shift can make.
So to leave everyone with a final thought, to ponder, having explored the power of your inputs, what is one small yet meaningful change you can make today to start intentionally engineering a more positive trajectory in your own life?
What one small upgrade can you make?
Exactly. And looking ahead, the article also touches on the topic of the art of digital detox, reclaiming your time and mental clarity. So we'll definitely be diving deeper into that in a future episode.
Stay tuned for that one.
Until then, keep those inputs high quality.
And experiment away.